Welcome to edition 3 of the World Cup Date, getting you up to date on everything that happened in France today during the Women's World Cup and looking ahead to tomorrow. And we'll have a lot to talk about when it comes to tomorrow. Today, you've got me, Jason Longshore, and Kelly Francis from the Unrelegated podcast and Queens of the South. What's up, Kelly?
What is up? In my opinion, it was a great World Cup day, but in other people's opinion, it was boring. We'll get into that.
It was a solid day. I think
it was a solid day.
The story, Canada winning 1-0 over Cameroon, not really a story. That was expected. The story is Argentina. And I think everybody who listens to soccer down here knows my story with Argentina and how I got hooked on the game because of Diego Maradona. So the country of Argentina, I've got an emotional connection to it. And when Argentina qualified for the World Cup this year, I was excited. But then I looked at what they had done in previous years, and I knew a little bit of the backstory of women's soccer in Argentina. They came into this, they'd been to 2 World Cups before. They came into this 0-6-0. They had allowed 33 goals in those 6 matches. They'd played Japan twice, hadn't beat them. First time was 6-0. Second time was closer, but a 1-0 loss. Well, today, Argentina got their first ever World Cup point. It's a scoreless draw against Japan. It wasn't the prettiest match at all, but Argentina grinded out a point, and they held Japan to only 2 shots on target. That's an epic performance for Argentina.
It absolutely is. Not only did they hold Japan back, they disrupted their play. They disrupted their pace of possession. It really got to Japan's core. You could see later in the match when all of the fouls started happening and the Japan players were getting really upset about it. But the defensive lines for Argentina were solid throughout the match. If there was any movement forward towards the box, you would see multiple Argentine players around the strikers. I mean, they really held their lines, they held their positions, and they were very solid and compact, and Japan didn't have an answer.
One answer they had was to get frustrated and start fouling people. And
correct.
Estefania Bonini from the Washington Spirit, she earned 3 yellow cards on Japanese players by herself. And yes, she's the one in the GIFs and the highlights that are everywhere of just ridiculous individual skill. She was a blast to watch.
She was incredibly fun to watch. And in particular, even at the very end of the match, when I'm sure her legs were just lead at that point, she was still just nutmegging players 1v1 and just dancing around them. It was really, really quite entertaining to watch. I will say, though, she had a lot of times where she had a breakaway and it felt like her teammates around her weren't able to support her fully to make that a full threat. And that's the only remarks I have on Argentina going forward, is that the attack wasn't all together and the passing wasn't the best passing you would want to see out of some strikers going forward. But I think Bonini was just absolutely incredible to watch. And if you just watch for Bonini alone in that game, you got a good game.
Yeah, we've talked about teams and players who are starting to play in big leagues, and Argentina's women's league is only now allowed to be professional. This is the first year that it has, and not everybody is starting in on that, because it takes time to get all these clubs on board. Boca Juniors, San Lorenzo are starting to do it, but there's only a handful of Argentine players who play abroad. Most of them play in Spain. Bonini plays for the Washington Spirit, although she spent the fall on loan to Levante in Spain. They have 1 player at Lyon. It's just a different level. I was a little surprised about Japan not being able to figure this out. This is a team that has made the final in back-to-back tournaments. I expected more from them.
Absolutely. And I was really let down by Yokoyama and Sugasawa, because they are absolute threats going forward, and it just felt like every time the ball was at their feet, I mean, this is also a credit to the Argentine defenders, but they just couldn't come up or create anything going forward. I mean, they had a few clear-cut chances, but you would expect, at least a few shots on goal from each of those players, and they just weren't able to produce.
Well, it wasn't pretty in the second game either, but Canada got the expected win, 1-0 over Cameroon. Kadisha Buchanan with a header for the goal. I mean, Canada had 74% of the possession. They had 16 shots. Cameroon only had 4 shots. It felt like even when Canada was struggling in front of goal that they were just dominant in this one.
They were dominant, yeah. And as we all were expecting or hoping for Sinclair to get a goal in this game, she didn't, which is unfortunate because she normally scores. And
had one cleared off the line.
Yes. Got really close at the very, very end. But I think it was a very dominant game for Canada. Obviously, the stats show that Prince was also really good up that wing. She was able to combine really well with Sinclair. I didn't see much out of Fleming, which is a little bit disappointing. But Buchanan, of course, was solid throughout the entire match. I got to say, though, it felt to me like after the first 25, maybe 30 minutes, Cameroon really started growing into the match and started pressuring the Canada backline. I mean, Cameroon's one real tactic on going forward is long balls over the back, and they are dangerous when they are able to fully connect those passes. But, I mean, you've got speed in those players. I'm trying to remember the one player in particular that I absolutely adored, and I think it was Ojewin on the left wing. She was just incredibly fast, very skilled player. Mbok, I'm gonna mess up the name, and I've heard it so many times, but Mdebuk, is that right?
I believe that's pretty
their
close.
Striker. Yeah.
Yes.
Their striker was phenomenal this game. She got really testy at the end of the match, and persistent infringement was something that was being harped on by the Canadian players. But I felt like her ability to hold on to the ball was really well done. She got a lot of fouls and near the box, but you just wanted a little bit more of combination play. The passing was sort of poor going forward, but they did hold their own for a good bit of time. It just was sort of unfortunate that they got that goal right before stoppage time.
Yeah, the passing, I mean, you nailed it. Their accuracy was 51%. That's really low. But to have that type of performance where you only have 26% of the ball, you only have 4 shots, and you're connecting passes, every other one, to only go down 1-0, I mean, that's in this tournament with third-place teams able to advance, and you get an opportunity here if you're Cameroon to take a narrow loss, but to stay in it. I think you got to feel pretty good about your chances against the Netherlands and against New Zealand.
I mean, absolutely. You're looking at 10 corners for Canada alone, and only 4 for Cameroon. So yeah, they were dominated this entire match, but they held their own, which is really, really impressive. Only 12 fouls in the game. I mean, it is unfortunate that the yellow cards for this game only came out of Cameroon, but that is also to be expected because there was a lot of persistent infringement on certain players for the Cameroonian team going against Canada. But overall, it was a good game, and the result was expected.
Yeah, it is a veteran team for Cameroon, so you wonder how they're going to, kind of hold up as the tournament goes on. The 2 players you mentioned, Ndambuk is 34 and plays in France, and Angeline is 30, who plays in Russia for CSKA Moscow. Hopefully they can hold up as the tournament goes on. Preparation for the tournament from the Cameroon side was one of the big questions. It's another one of the federations that they have issues on the men's side. This is not a male team versus a female team at all. This is Cameroon's federation, doesn't have any money, period. And we've seen the men's team at times, I think, threaten to strike during a World Cup, or maybe they even did one time. There's just no money to prepare properly. And this is a group that you would love to see them with proper training, with proper preparation, because you feel like they could make some noise in this tournament.
Absolutely. If they got the full preparation that they needed ahead of time, were able to sort of strategize and prepare a system going forward, you could really see them start to dominate teams. Because when you look at the players individually, they have skill. When the passing is there, it's good. They just need it's practice at that point. And then you're talking about speed. Once they're able to link up combination plays and have that comfortability with each other, imagine the speed of those players going forward and just bombing those defenses. Yeah, if the Federation was able to find the money to allow the preparation, you could see some really dangerous Cameroonian teams coming forward.
Yeah, I hope some of the smaller teams in this tournament realize how close they really are to advancing and making some big news at the World Cup. And Argentina's in that boat as well, Cameroon, quite a few different countries. If they can just find a little more investment, find a little more to help these players, I think they'll be rewarded with better performances. A couple bits of news around the tournament. 57% is the lowest possession advantage leader in a match so far, and we've almost gotten to where everybody's played in the tournament. That's a little surprising that we haven't had any kind of 50-50 type of games just yet. I don't know if there's really anything to base that on. Maybe it's just the matchups that we're getting, but that's not typical.
Yeah, it's normally not typical. I mean, it obviously leads for maybe some energetic and exciting games because then you have counterattacking going on.
True.
But I think as we've seen sort of the last couple of games, certain matches are to be expected on the domination. So you've got Norway dominating, you've got, France dominating. I think the only game that really had that 57% was the England-Scotland game, where it felt like a constant battle back and forth. And it was extremely exciting to watch because at any moment, either of those teams could just run down and outscore the other. And that's eventually the games that we're going to end up seeing once we get through this group stage, because like we've seen today, there are some lower ranked teams who are just either getting into their first World Cup, just getting their first points in a World Cup, or really just getting their first legs and movements with the whole team in the World Cup. There are some disadvantage for the lower ranked teams, and I think that that's showing in percentage basis. But once we get into those knockout rounds and those semifinals and quarterfinals, we're going to be seeing some really hot 50-50 games.
Another cool thing that came out today, we saw the great TV ratings out of France for the opener with their team in it, and we always know that the U.S. TV ratings are great for the U.S. women's team. The England-Scotland match was the most watched women's match in UK TV history. I believe the BBC had it. Huge numbers, and I think this is just going to be one of the common things around the world with this tournament, is that more people are tuning in, more people are interested in what's going on with our women's national teams, and this feels like really a turning point for the women's game, not just in our neck of the woods, but worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. When there's more investment being put into women professional players, you're going to see better quality players coming out because they've got more time on the ball. They've got more time to spend growing, not only themselves, but their teammates and the sport in general. So you're looking at better individual players. You're looking at better teams collectively. You're looking at more exciting play. I can only see the viewership going up from here. And like we've said from the very beginning of this World Cup, this is going to be one of the most entertaining World Cups we've ever seen for the women's game. And I'm only excited to see where it goes from here as far as viewership.
Yeah, you mentioned the investment, and that's been one of the things that, has been talked about. Investors are wanting to see an audience. Well, 6.1 million watching that England-Scotland match in the United Kingdom is a big audience that an investor, an advertiser, a sponsor would want to be hitting. So this is going to support the fact that, okay, now that investment can take it to another level. There's an audience waiting to see your ads, your company's brand, your logo, all those types of things on it. So hopefully this is something that sparks a big change. You got 3 matches tomorrow, and we'll get through the first 2 kind of quick because I think we've got a few things on the final one. New Zealand and the Netherlands kick things off at 9 a.m. New Zealand has been a bit all over the place in the run-up to the tournament. They beat England in a pre-World Cup friendly, which was a huge win, and they followed that up with a loss to Wales, who didn't qualify, which was a very disappointing loss. The Dutch are the defending European champions. They won in 2017, and they're a really exciting team, especially up top. I think they can go pretty far in this tournament.
Oh, They absolutely can. They're first up. Let's just talk about their front three, right? So we're looking at Medema, right, who is probably one of the best strikers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at Leaky Martins, who was also ranked one of the best players in the world in 2017. So you're looking at her on the wing, and then you're also looking at Van de Sanen, sorry, who plays for Lyon. So you're looking at not only a player for Lyon, but two players for Arsenal, who just also won the league. You're looking at these very experienced, very talented players as an attack. We all know that New Zealand does have a good attack going forward, but their backline's not the best. If they can hold their ground and they can hold back these three forwards, then you're looking at maybe a 50-50 match. But in my mind, the Dutch are just going to steam plow this.
Yeah, this feels like a game where New Zealand's going to sit, though, and try to defend and frustrate the Dutch. The Dutch are one of those teams that I think we're starting to see more of at the World Cup level, who are very talented, very good, but they've got to show that they can do it at the biggest stage. They've got to show that they can handle that pressure. I think New Zealand just tries to be one of these teams with about 30% of the ball and is just looking to counter and break out when they can and get something off a set piece.
Yeah, absolutely. They're gonna go into this the same way that Argentina did today, looking to get a point out of it, holding your ground, sitting and bunkering. But I still think you're looking at a forward three that's known to be extremely creative, extremely good on their feet, really good 1v1. It's going to be a very, very hard task for New Zealand.
So the next one's interesting. Chile and Sweden are facing off at 12 noon. Sweden is a team that's usually pretty good in this tournament, and they knocked out the United States of the last Olympics. Chile, it's their first time. This is their first time in the World Cup, but they played a couple of matches with the United States in the lead up to the tournament, and they were not bad at all. They were very competitive. They feel like, one of the newcomers to the event that could make some noise, and if they get a point out of Sweden, they'll feel really good about themselves.
Absolutely, they will. You're looking at a team in Sweden that's been to the World Cup. They're seasoned in that regard. If Chile can come in here and hold their ground as a darling, then yeah, we're looking at a very interesting storyline here. And I think they have the ability to do so. This is like we've said, is one of the interesting things about this. And any team at any point in time has the ability to shock some people. And if we're looking at a game tomorrow that will sort of end up changing the headlines on what was to be expected, I think it might be this game.
Yeah, this group, I think, overall plays out kind of interesting because if Chile or Thailand are able to keep the score lines against the United States and against Sweden close or even steal a point from either one, and then basically that final day of the group with Chile and Thailand playing against each other, it's winner take all. They could get through as a third place team, maybe even a second place team if they're able to steal a point somewhere along the way. So Chile feels like they're going to sit. They're going to try to frustrate Sweden, try to draw Sweden out. What's interesting about this one is that's what Sweden did to the U.S. in the Olympics. Is Sweden a team that can play on the front foot and hurt Chile? So feels like a little bit of a clash of styles potentially here.
Yeah, definitely could be, but you could also look at Sweden doing that particularly to draw Chile out, which might be an interesting tactic on the back burn. So I think I'm most looking forward to this game in the regards of what's the system that's going to be used, what's the tactics going to be used, who's going to start moving forward, and who's going to decide to sit back. I mean, I'd really hate to see a game where it's defensive-minded from both teams all the way through. But I think that, if somebody really wants to pull an upset here, I feel like Chile has the ability to do so.
Yeah, I do too. The final game of the day, the final game of everybody making their World Cup debuts for 2019, United States and Thailand. Thailand comes in, it's their second World Cup appearance. They are on a 5-game losing streak coming into the tournament. It's a team that has struggled against the biggest teams in the world. The United States is one of the biggest teams in the world. It feels like an easy win for the U.S. Outside of final score, what makes this a successful first match for the United States for you?
I think the United States getting comfortable with their footing. I think the creativity of the strikers going forward, or the creativity of the attack in general. I think the defense needs to hold it to, if we can, a no-shot game by Thailand would be preferred. It just shows that the defense is doing their part. And I think it's absolutely 100% possible for them to do so. But we just need to see all of the players settling in, being their first World Cup match during this tournament. There's maybe going to be butterflies, maybe going to be jitters. I mean, they are as seasoned as it gets with all of the teams in this tournament, but you still have your nervous first 15 minutes, I think, in any match. And then once you just settle in, get a rhythm, and then I think the way we saw when the U.S. played Mexico is do not hold back. This is not a game where you can take it easy just because of who you're playing against. And Mexico is a good team. Mexico is a really good team. Mexico is not a Thailand. What we're seeing is the U.S. going against a team which they have every ability to, unfortunately, blow out of the water. And I think that they need to go forward and do exactly that. Show their dominance, show their possession, and show that they are here to win the entire thing.
Yeah, it feels like it needs to be a statement game. I feel like they're in a different spot than England is. You know, we talked about it with England feeling like maybe they were coming in and they got the 2-0 lead and they could kind of coast a little bit because they were in a really good spot. I feel like the U.S. needs to make a statement here and needs a blowout game. You haven't seen one outside of the first match of the tournament, the France-South Korea match that felt like an absolute blowout. I think the U.S. needs that to kind of I feel like the U.S. and France are going to get compared every time they play because of that potential quarterfinal that's on the cards.
It absolutely is on the cards. And if we as the U.S. team are looking at any other team to show up more, it would be France. We have to show that we are here to play the game. And if the cards do lie the way that they might lie, we are going to be going against them in the quarterfinals. And we need to establish our dominance and show up as the reigning World Cup champs to say we are here. This is our tournament. It's on your home soil, but we're taking it back.
This is a big one. Should be a win, should be a comfortable win, but I think you're almost looking for some other things here. You want to find that comfort level, like you mentioned. You want to see this team take control, completely dominate the match. You know, I'll be looking to see this front line of Megan Rapinoe, Tobin Heath on either side of Alex Morgan, and how the interaction works, the central midfield as well. I'm curious to see what the lineup is. Is it, you know, I think we're pretty well under the assumption that Julie Ertz will be the 6 and be the defensive midfielder. Is it going to be Samantha Mewis in there? Is it going to be Lindsay Horan in there to start? I think Rose Lavelle is the other starter you can pencil in. Horan's had some injuries, hasn't been 100%. I think Samantha Mewis has been amazing, and she's the one for me that needs to be in from the start because she gives you the most balance in that midfield. But Horan had maybe her career year in 2018, so it's tough to take her out. That trio, and you've got 4 players for it in 3 spots, maybe is the most important part of the U.S. team in this tournament.
Oh, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And I would agree with you. Muse has had a really good run up. And I think I really like her combination play with Rapinoe more than I do like with Horan. But Horan has also had a really good year. But yeah, you are absolutely looking at Tobin Heath and Alex Morgan and Rapinoe to bomb this game out of the water. And also in that regard, Rose Lavelle's had a very good run up this year. She's played really well. In NWSL. I can't talk today for some reason. I'm looking at Ertz in the midfield to distribute and to find the game and see that vision and that pass. And then at the same regard, Rapinoe and Heath have an amazing ability to pick out a pass and slot it in. And then at the same time, you also have to realize you got your backs in O'Hara and Dunn, who are more than capable of also charging forward. So it's going to be very interesting to see obviously what they do creatively going forward, but this is very much going to be a power play for the United States. This is going to be a possession play for the United States. I'd be very interested to see what the possession of this game is going to be. And I'd be interested to see what Thailand's tactics are going into the match.
Yeah, I think they're going to sit and try to defend as long as they can. Possession, I'm going to guess it gets to 78%. That's my predicted number for the U.S.
That sounds about right. It just sounds just right. I mean, I wouldn't expect for them to get over 80, but at the same time, there is no telling. There's absolutely no telling.
Yeah, we'll see. Couple more ratings bits and news too, and some kind of surprising ones. I wondered how this tournament on Telemundo would do here in the United States in Spanish language, with Mexico not qualifying. There was some concern on the Telemundo side as to how this would go. The Germany-China match, number 1 in Spanish language overnight ratings in 10 of the top Hispanic markets, and that was the morning window, the 9-11 match. Spain and South Africa, number 1 in Spanish language overnight ratings in 13 of the top Hispanic markets. That was the 11:30 to 2:15 window. And Telemundo was part of a very interesting study, and I'm about to retweet this right now, but digging into it, talking about the growing popularity of women's soccer and the growing popularity of women's soccer among female Hispanics, among Latinas, and the fact that in the next 5 years, the Women's World Cup can be as popular as the Men's World Cup with Hispanic television. These are things that, I don't know if we ever really dug too deep into these types of possibilities, but these are massive, massive numbers. And when you look at it, a line like this: fanhood for women's soccer is strong among Hispanic women, with 54% saying they are fans of women's soccer, compared to 28% of non-Hispanic women. Indeed, soccer is seen as an important part of Hispanic identity. Moreover, this enthusiasm is expected to grow, as about 6 in 10, 62% of Hispanic female soccer fans hope to share their passion for soccer with their children. Those are pretty unbelievable numbers. It's from a study, La Ola de la FIFA. It was commissioned by NBC Universal Telemundo in partnership with Horvitz Research.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are incredible numbers. And you'd only hope that it would obviously grow through all demographics for females to support the women's game. But that is absolutely impressive that those numbers are what they are. And to have the next Women's World Cup just being as popular as the Men's World Cup for Hispanic women is exciting and intriguing, and that also plays into this whole discussion we had with viewership and marketing, because there's a market there that only will grow the game even more, that will only give investments and advertising money back into these teams for them to be able to develop even further, especially when Mexico comes back into the World Cup next go round, which I 100% believe they will. It just will be really interesting to see, and I'm all for it.
6 in 10 Hispanics are looking forward to tuning in to the U.S. women's match on Tuesday. Over half of the soccer fans looking forward to the event are Hispanic women, and the kicker is half of Hispanics and 1/3 of non-Hispanics, 51% and 35% respectively, feel that in the next 5 years, the FIFA Women's World Cup will be equally as popular as the Men's FIFA World Cup.
Well, I will say I'm in that 1/3.
I'm really hoping so. I think there will be parts of the world that will take more time. But, I mean, let's be real. Not that long ago, there were questions in the Latina community and in the Hispanic community about, is women's soccer a thing? Is it something we should follow? Is it something that's going to get traction? And over the last maybe decade, its growth has been substantial, and it's probably been one of the biggest growth factors in the women's game across the board.
Yeah, which is exciting to hear, because then that means that there is investment going into the women's game. And that's something that you want to see happen worldwide. I mean, we talked about this obviously with Argentina, but it's this understanding and this realization from people that women's soccer, and I hate this every time, and I've gotten, as I keep on my perpetual Kelly gets in Twitter fights about people who say that the women's game is boring and lackluster and a joke compared to the men's World Cup and the men's games and play. And it's just, you have to sit at that point in time and be like, you know what, you're allowed your opinion. You're wrong, but you're allowed your opinion. But it's also, you have to understand the disparity between what people are paid, the fact that, most men athletes can be an athlete and play, and that's what they do. But a lot of the women athletes can't just be an athlete. They've got to do other things to provide for themselves. And that's holding the women's game back. So when you see a progression like this in Mexico, you're seeing an investment in the women themselves. And that's something that, like I said, you want to see worldwide.
It's massive, and it's only going to get bigger. And I think this tournament is going to open up a ton of eyes to it. If you're listening to us and you haven't been watching the Women's World Cup, check it out. The U.S. play tomorrow. That's going to get a lot of people's attention. There's going to be a lot of people talking about it. We'll be talking about it tomorrow after the match. I believe you and Jess are actually watching it together, correct?
Yes. So if anybody also wants to join in on us, we are going to go to Midway. That's in East Atlanta, Midway Pub, and we'll be watching it there with a big Footy Mob contingent. And then we will also, luckily enough, got to talk to Midway today, and we'll also be filming our Queens of the South episode live from Midway Pub tomorrow.
Very, very cool. So That is the spot in town if you're watching the Women's World Cup. 3 o'clock for the U.S. match. We'll have a World Cup date afterwards to talk about our thoughts about it. And we'll then get moving into the second game for everybody, and you'll be able to compare and contrast. So if you're new to the tournament, watch the U.S. tomorrow. Come back and listen to us talk about it. Listen to Queens of the South talk about it as well. And then keep watching, because it's been a really fun tournament. It's been open, exciting, attacking play, and you're missing out if you're not watching it. So please check it out. Please keep listening to the show. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition. Thanks for listening.